All right, so we have our grids in, and now I'm going to put the columns in. And if you'll remember as well, we have our levels, trellis plan A1 and A2 that are offset. And so I'm going to go in, and we use columns on the house that were architectural columns, but we're going to use structural columns for this one. So I'm going to go to the Structure tab, and I am going to select Column. And it has a wide flange that's a 10 by 49. That's the size of one of the edges and the pounds per linear foot. I would like something a little smaller, so I'm going to go to Load Family. And there are columns here, but these are architectural columns, and we want structural columns. So we need to scroll down, go to Structural Columns, go to Steel, and we want a wide flange column. I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to scroll down, and let's get, maybe it goes from 10 to 8, the 8 by 6, 7, and click OK. And it loads that type. It needs to overwrite the existing family and add that type. So I'm going to click Override Existing Version. And I'm going to come to my pull down here, and that 8 by 6, 7 should be there. And I could come in at this point and I could just pick at the intersections, right? And it would actually place those columns in. But I can also do at grids. The one thing I want to check before I start placing the columns is this area right here. It's set to depth, which means if I'm starting at trellis plan A1 as my base, it's going to take that column and shoot it down instead of up, right? And so I want to make sure that says height. It's going to go up. And then the connection I want to be, instead of unconnected, I want it to be trellis plan A2. So basically, let's say start at A1, go up to A2. And then I can go to at grids, and I'm just going to do a crossing window, which is a left click, hold down and drag from right to left. And it's going to select only the grids. And you're going to see these guys come in. Now if you want to change the orientation, you can tap the space bar and it will change the orientation. So I'm going to change the orientation, and I'm going to click Finish. It still wants to place columns. I'm going to hit Escape twice to stop that. I'm going to go to my 3D view, and there's my columns. I'm going to go back to my trellis plan. And the next thing we want to do before I go back there is we want to put those beams in, and that's going to happen on trellis plan A2. So I'm going to double click on that, and we don't have a view of anything here because the columns are actually below our view range. So I'm going to go in and change my view range by scrolling down and going to Edit. And if I edit that view range, you'll see that the bottom is trellis plan A2, so it's not looking, and also the level of the view depth is A2, so it just goes to A2 and stops, and the columns only come up to A2, so we can't see them. So I'm just going to increase the bottom, which is the selectable area, to trellis plan A1, and the view to trellis plan A1, and apply. And now we're actually looking all the way down to the ground. You can do this, or you could do an underlay as well, but in fact we probably didn't need to do this because we had the grids, but it's nice to be able to see what you're working on. So I'm going to go to Structure and Beam, and one would think I would have the beam that I loaded for the column, but I don't, so I have to go load that family again. So I'm going to go down to Structural Framing, which is where you get the beams, go to Steel, go down to the very bottom where the wide flanges are, and from the type selector I'm going to pick the 8 by 67, I believe is what I chose, and click OK. And it's going to come in. I'm going to go to the pull down, and I'm going to pick the 8 by 67. I'm going to come in, and I'm going to left click from there to there, and you don't really see anything. You see the little columns, but there's not much there for the beam, and that's because our detail mode is set to coarse, and that only shows the beams, the structural beams, as a line. If I come down to my view control bar, I can pick this and go to medium, and you'll see the thickness of the columns and the beams. So I'm going to continue to sort of draw my beams in. You could, if you wanted to, pick these long ends and drag them all the way through to there, right? And then if I didn't want to draw the other one, I could pick that and I could mirror, draw a line from the midpoint of this guy, making sure I get the midpoint, right? And it'll flip that guy over there. And then I can just copy this guy down using the multiple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You could also use a beam system in there if you wanted to. So if I go to my 3D view now, you have a little structure, right? So when we come back, we'll put the louvers in.